Hello, and welcome to the FlowRy Show, a journey through life's tapestry, wisdom for every generation. On this show, we talk about where generations intertwine, sharing stories, insights, and dreams. Whether you are a seasoned sage or a curious young mind, we're all students in the grand classroom of life. Join with me today is my co-host Mike Ryan, and I'm Nicole Flowers. And we have along with us a returning special guest, Tatyana Kanzaveli. And she last time we met with Tatyana, also known as T, we spoke about the importance of healthcare innovation and big data and some of the applications where she has used big data as well as blockchain in healthcare. So welcome, Tatyana. We are so happy to have you return to the show. And I'll just turn it over briefly to Mike to make some small remarks and to remind us as to where
Sure.
we're heading.
Thank you, Nicole. It's always a pleasure to be here. And Tatiana, who's really a neighbor of mine, we've had not directly neighbor, but in the Palo Alto, we've had tea and coffee with a lot of folks that she has in her network, and always been a pioneer, a trendsetter, and always a strategic mind with her world-class chess mind that she's constantly playing on a global level and really breaking the barriers of not just the glass ceilings, but also just the innovation that she brings. And we are looking forward to having some conversation today about what she's currently working on and maybe what the future holds with this thing we call AI. So with that, welcome.
Thank you for having me again. Glad to be on the show.
Again, welcome, Tatyana. Let's dig right into it. You had started your career as a programmer. Were you honing on your technical skills? You developed a passion for technology and looking at technology as a way to solve real world problems. You then rose through the ranks at major companies like PricewaterhouseCoopers and others, gaining valuable leadership experience and industry insights. And then along the way, Tatyana, something like pulled at you where you decide to venture into the startup world and looking at and started during the early days of the web and embracing innovation and as well as risk taking, which you continue to grow the company that you started, Open Health Network. Can you share with our listeners today what are some of the biggest challenges you have faced in your career and how did you overcome them?
That's an excellent question. So I'll start from the start. So I came with, not knowing anyone, as a refugee, as a matter of fact, through camps. And I was lucky enough to find almost immediately a job as a programmer. And then within a short period of time, I was a good programmer, so I was hired. Without resume, that's a different story. And
Being a grand test master, you'll be good at anything.
and then I was approached by a recruiter to go and interview with PricewaterhouseCoopers, and they were opening this SAP think tank in Menlo Park. And I said, no, I'm not going to an interview. So this is very typical, I think, for a lot of women where we're holding ourselves back. We think we're not good enough. And with my background coming from very conservative environment and so on, I felt like, oh no, I mean, why would I go for the interview that I have almost zero chance of getting in? But recruiter convinced me. She was like, just go and talk to them. So she definitely influenced. And when I went, I was almost hired on the spot. But that opened up completely new opportunities for me. And if I would have not taken that step, that was completely uncomfortable, I would have not probably ended up where I am today. And the one of the absolutely awesome things that happened to me that doesn't happen too often to other people was that I had the best boss you can ever think of. And you can't even imagine the impact and importance of having a leader who supports you, who is behind you, who empowers you. And I can give you an example. So I was in the meeting room with five top executives from Japanese company, and my boss was there. So it's all, 6, 7 executive level males, and myself. At that time, I was pretty young, and we talked about very complex business and technology issues. And because it was my area of expertise, I had something to say. So obviously, what I did, I grabbed a pen and notepad, wrote my point of view, and gave it to my boss so he can voice it. What happened next was pretty fabulous. So suddenly he announced, Tatiana has something to say.
Hmm.
It was almost like, right? But you can't imagine how important that was for
Mhm.
me to get that exposure and recognition and everything else. So I don't think there are too many. I worked for other bosses that the only thing they were doing just pulling knowledge from me and others and representing their own and never credited anyone. So what this type of experiences early on in my career, and I worked for a very long time, and lucky enough, I was moving pretty fast on career level within PricewaterhouseCoopers. That was great. And I loved every single day of my life that I worked with the
Mhm.
team, with the partners, exceptional people. And it was right before you know, 2000, right? I mean, whatever,
Y2K.
the web thing and Web 2.0. So I was approached by very well known recruiters to join at C level with very well funded startup in technology space. But so I was like going back and forth, but I felt that I need to get out of my comfort zone being, at very high level in Price Waterhouse, very well recognized, very well treated, becoming a partner, and so on, and get myself out there where I can experience, certain things that, like building a company. Um, so that's what I did. Interestingly enough, at the same time, there are other people I worked with who decided, it was before obviously the crash, to join startups. Within a short period of time, most of them came back to one of the big fives because the real world is very different from the other one. I decided to stick in, so I pretty much rode the ups and downs of what happened since. And it took me time to come up with concept that I felt strongly enough that I can lead. So, and that's how I started the company. Because again, um, for people who, you know, who were born here and grew up here, things are different than
Yeah.
from, someone who came from nothing. And if you remember, health insurance was tied to the company you work for. You couldn't buy it in the open market. There's so many different things that were so important for me, having a family and a child, that I just couldn't pick my different career path. So when people are like, "Oh, you started a company not in, when you're in diapers," like, no, this I couldn't, right? But as soon as I could, I started it.
It's an amazing journey you've had, and I mean, both of it is to get out of your comfort zone. Part, whether it was your choice or not, as a refugee, and coming as an immigrant, and then often has been the case. I'm married to an immigrant, and obviously Nicole's an immigrant. I'm not an immigrant. I was born in Washington, D.C., although that's not part of the United States, as I say. But I mean, to basically show up to that interview, right? And then people recognizing your talent. And then even when you had a great boss, it sounds extraordinary that he recognized your talent. And as you say, most bosses would just, read the room and just go ahead with it versus putting you on the spot and not just showing up at the interview, but then speaking up at this high level group, this Japanese company, and then also recognizing getting out of your comfort zone, right, to leaving the security of a Price Waterhouse Cooper, a top one, one of the top 5 at one point, or maybe the top 2 or 3, and then to have the tenacity and the drive and the fearlessness to start your own venture during a very difficult time and a prosperous time in many cases during that time in 2000 and beyond. So it's been a remarkable journey. Why don't you kind of give us a little context as far as the open network and kind of where that came from, what the genesis behind that, and where it is now?
Right. So I don't think there are too many companies that started the way this company started. But I was diagnosed with cancer, and I was very depressed about it, as probably many people. When you suddenly face like, oh my gosh, and um, there were lots of unknowns. And as soon as I was able to get back to being able to think straight, I started looking at me as a person who was exercising, eating right, doing all those right things. I'm like, how did I get that? And then I was told by pretty known people that you're just not lucky, right? We can't explain it. It's not like it's genetics or specific things that you did. And me being technologist and AI and in data, I was like, let's try to figure it out. And I started Open Cancer Network back then, and I had a deck that contained a vision of us gathering massive amounts of multidimensional data sets that cover 360 degrees of data that can impact your health. And again, at that time, cancer was on top of my list. So I had from environmental to diet to blood, like every single aspect of the data. Now it's a common knowledge. Back then, people didn't talk about that.
Right.
The most interesting thing that I found a co-founder that I didn't know, never met. We met on Facebook, but I explained what I want to do. He was in data science, and we decided, okay, we'll start a company. All of that happened 2 days before my cancer surgery. That I didn't know how that will go.
Wow.
But I felt like we need to start this company. And then as soon as surgery was like, I don't know, 7, 8 hours. And when they woke me up, I immediately asked for the cell phone to check like what's happening to the company. And my surgeon, he went out and my family was partying outside, right, waiting. He said, she'll be okay. Just for your cell phone.
She's on the road to recovery and success
Right.
already.
Like first she cursed, but she was in so much pain. Secondly, she asked for your cell phone.
And Tatiana, you have demonstrated that you are an innovation catalyst. Look, you went through a surgery, and the first thing you want to know, what's going on with my company, which also showcase how much you have fostered a culture of innovation, encouraging your teams, thinking outside the box. Mike and I, we often talk about how we go about advocating for others and creating space for others to build and create bridges. And you're also a bridge builder. You go about connecting diverse teams and stakeholders. Why don't you talk to us about, because you've also admitted throughout your career, in the early parts of your career, you've had advocates, you have been mentored. Tell us about how you go about approaching mentoring and guiding some of the startups as well as the Fortune 500 companies. And also, let's talk about the Richard Branson Entrepreneur Center, some of the work you have done there as well.
Yeah, so it was also kind of interesting because I, even at Price Waterhouse, one of my roles was to work with startups in SAP space that I had to assess to see if it makes sense for Price Waterhouse to bring them in and partner with them. And again, it was for SAP practice. So I got exposure to kind of working with early stage startups back then and working with the founders, trying to, help them and see if it's a fit. Being Price Waterhouse, we couldn't bring risk and uncertainty to our clients, right? So, so it was very interesting. And then I went through startups and um, I met a company with female founders, and I was so impressed by the vision and how they were like coding all this, and it was literally like first prototype. So um, I recommended them to people at 500 startups, and they were able to get in, which was fabulous. And then they came back to me and said, "Well, you've been helping us and other startups. Maybe you should become a mentor at 500 startups." So I decided to do that, and I really loved the whole environment. And it's kind of win-win, right? Because you're constantly communicating with bright people with new ideas, very passionate. So it's a good experience overall. And then um, applied to become a mentor at Richard Branson Entrepreneurial Center, because in general, my vision is that we need to make equal opportunities for entrepreneurs and in general for job related stuff everywhere in the world, because if people busy creating things, innovating, then they will spend less time doing bad things. That's in general my concept on all of this. So, and I think it's all goodness. So, and I always supported that. I've done just, like meetup type of event where thousands of women in Kenya signed up, and I did the whole day of, event for women entrepreneurs. When I did TEDx events, my angle was always global women entrepreneurs. And I really also fundamentally like connecting people from different industries, different backgrounds. So we tend to be highly specialized, and people don't realize that you can bring people from different industries, even from, completely not connecting, like an artist and technologist, and still find common themes and make it interesting. So all of that kind of always leads me to creating some kind of networking events or participating and helping entrepreneurs. The challenge is that my time is just spread so thin that I have to, in many cases, to say no, because otherwise, every single day I'll spend, every hour of the day helping others without doing things that I really care about. So I have to kind of balance things and curate and manage my schedule. But I greatly enjoy that. And when Gen AI became available for public, I immediately realized how disruptive the technology is. So I started this movement, Women in Gen AI. And I think it's highly important and to educate women. Doesn't matter what they do, from accounting to, being moms at home or running enterprises. We all need to know this. It will impact how we do things, where we do, whether we're employed or not, and so on. So, because of my background, working with C-level execs at Fortune 100 companies across all the business processes that I know by heart, from automotive to hospitality, oil and gas, everything in between, supply chain, warehouse management, you name it. I know exactly what's happening where. I immediately, kind of realized that this technology will change at the highest level, and we need to build new methodologies, new way of managing, leading big companies, small companies, everything in between. So I started writing about my thoughts on how potential impact. If you look at the dates, it was like literally 2 years ago when people probably didn't realize how this potentially can evolve and impact.
Right.
Well, I mean, Tatyana, you started touching on Gen AI, and when we think about the advancements in genomics and AI, how much it will enable truly personalized treatment plans tailored to individuals' genetic makeup. I mean, before we got on the show, Mike was talking about his mom, who's now 94, and his grandfather lived until he was in his late 90s, and he wants his mom to live until he's 100. So when we
Right.
start looking at genetics and makeup and lifestyle factors, let's talk about some of the future healthcare technology trends that you're seeing. A couple years ago, we started looking at the metaverse, virtual and augmented reality, and how that's going to revolutionize medical training and surgical procedures. I mean, even through your own personal experience, having gone through cancer and starting a company and trying to extract and collect and create information to make it very meaningful. Talk to us about the future of healthcare technology and what are some of the trends and where do you see things heading?
I think the technology, even at the stage it is now, and it's evolving every single day, it's just unbelievable. I think it will empower people to take ownership and control of their health, which is a good thing, because and it's important thing for us to do, because we kind of outsource our health to someone else, right? Oh, we're sick, we go see physician, but we're not focusing on prevention and changes that we need to do in our lifestyle and other things that potentially will help us to stay healthy. Now, today was an announcement that I was like, oh yeah, the first AI clinic in Asia went live. AI clinic,
Wow.
right? I don't think
Non-human,
it will happen
completely
here.
AI robotics.
Yes, completely AI. It's all algorithms and everything else. But if you think about it, like I drop every single test result and everything there is to know about me in Gen AI, right? This I can create prompts that will look at different data sets in blood tests, not just horizontally, where you can see, oh, your cholesterol is high. Okay, yeah, I see that. Now, if you take 5, 6 years or 10 years whatever worth of different tests, and then try to correlate across all the different things along with other things that you can share about yourself, lifestyle, and everything else, you might find things that not that obviously take, statin, right? That probably is, but there might be some other correlations that uh, you can find even without having, degree, and you can validate and cross validate. I'm not saying that at this point you can just follow blindly with all everything you can do with Gen AI. However, there are real good use cases where people with rare diseases were able to find diagnostic information that otherwise was very difficult for them to get to. There are published cases. So I'm pretty bullish on the use by physicians, by people. And I was able to use the company that Eric Schmidt runs, that's unbelievable. And today they just published a paper that's amazing, where they built this huge database of data related to moleculars and discovery and all of that at the lowest level, where it can enable scientists to design new drugs and develop new treatments. And today they published paper that proves that they were able to develop the design for the drug for the people who are losing their sight to macular degeneration. It's published today, which is unbelievable, right? Now, I went to that tool without having any background in biotech or whatever, and I used certain queries to find ways to use existing formulations to treat, you know, potential, not allergy. And it comes all the way down to like molecular level.
Hmm.
And I spoke at South by Southwest with CEO of It's Silico. And Silico is the first company that was able to use AI all the way through the drug development process, from um, identifying targets, developing molecular, all the way to the drug that's in phase 2 plus clinical trial, everything driven by AI.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, especially having a little bit of exposure to drug development, some companies we've been involved with, knowing even at the end point that 50% of drugs do not work for most people. It's literally trial and error. And so as we get to what you're saying, using AI, that the next generation and the next generation and the next generation, hopefully we'll move from being 15 years to take a drug to drug development to literally, months at some point in the future, whether that's 5 years or 20.
I will tell you that I see even something that I'm more excited, which will be highly personalized drugs, because we kind of all bought into this vision that you have headache and I have headache. We go and get the same Excedrin and take 2 pills, you and I, right? Well, I'm not you. And why is it de facto that I need the same, 2 pills that you? So basically, we grew up
Right.
not
Advertising.
questioning, not questioning the fundamentals. I think that we'll get to the point with robotics and manufacturing and the way drugs are designed that we will be able to get to highly personalized drug design, so that we'll know everything about your specifics in the context of the disease and tailor the drug itself to you.
Right.
I don't think it's like, I don't think it's like super futuristic to be honest with you.
No, and in some cases that I know personally that is taking place in some of the contract manufacturers of drug, and the other thing that kind of related to or is related to that is the cost, right? That it's not costing you $80,000 for a treatment for X, Y, or Z, and that it gets down to fractions of that is really the hope, and it's expedited in through clinical trials to people, because that's one of the biggest costs of drug development is finding people. I think at one point it's like $180,000 to do one person in a clinical trial. Now it may have changed, but it becomes cheaper, faster, and more effective and efficacious for the impact on whatever that's heart disease or cancer or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or whatever. And I think that's a great future. I think of where we're at and using AI with no human could do it. You can't have 40 or 50 people on a bench in a lab doing that. You can actually, I've seen the future with a few companies that are doing that through using AI. So.
Yeah, the other thing is, like you mentioned, that it's hard to, in time-consuming process through clinical trials. So I think phase 1, 2, like all of those will be done with synthetic data.
Right.
So
Exactly.
you will still have humans, but I think that will be amazing how many lives we can save for people with orphan diseases, rare diseases, like where you don't have enough people to make
Right.
it cost effective to focus on developing those drugs or whatever. So this hopefully will bring hope to many, many people.
Yeah.
And with synthetic data, you can at least initially to screen out potential big issues, right?
Right. Yeah. It ultimately becomes personalized medicine, as many envisioned, 10, 15, or 20 years ago. We're not that far off that horizon where that is based on whatever your clinical diagnosis is, that you have a treatment plan that is not a 50% or 50 or less chance of you have actually having an impact that will improve your health status and bring you back to, hopefully where you are. So.
Yeah, so it's all good. It's
Yeah.
all super exciting.
Yeah, it is
At
exciting.
least for us geeks who look into the future.
But, and I said off camera was that, my grandson was born in April. There's projections that, he should live 150 years or so because of this, where we're able, whether it's a cancer treatment or heart disease or whatever, that we're able to treat it at an earlier point of view and a personalized, where it's not just 50%, it's 100 or 98% effectiveness on treating whatever the ailment happens to be. And that's exciting.
Yeah, and there is also notion to look at aging as a disease. If that's the case, then there will be models and interventions that will potentially keep things from expiring in your body, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, part of that ties into also prevention, right? And not doing the what do you call it? The healthy habits and stuff like that we're not doing, which, a lot of that we've known, but we also had television commercials in the 50s and 60s saying doctors recommended you smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day. Right? or, oh my goodness, I can't believe I ate the whole thing. So take, Pepto-Bismol, or I've got a headache. Well, take an Excedrin, and it's going back to what you're saying, Tatyana, part of it is driven by, direct to consumers of everyone must be schizophrenic and impacted by certain diseases that are less than a normal population, into getting to that orphan drugs. I mean, what gets things through FDA often is you go through as an orphan drug, and then you take that beyond that, and then it gets to a greater population. So it's very exciting. So I love what you're doing, and really appreciate your sharing your journey, your story, your strategic chess player of how using that outside of healthcare, having something as interesting and using the brain power to think. And, Watson did one thing, right, that supposedly, impacted the chess playing. But again, having yourself as a human being using the chess moves of the future and how we can impact healthcare for the better. So we applaud you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Tatyana. Thanks for fostering an environment of innovation and encouraging us to think creatively, taking the risk to push the boundaries of healthcare technology, and most importantly, always keeping the patient experience at the forefront of our healthcare innovation efforts. To our viewers, thanks for listening in as we build connections and understanding, creating a journey across generations, which allows us to connect at a much deeper level, learning from each other's experiences and fostering understanding. Let's embrace the power of each of our stories and relationships and create a more connected world. Until next time, thanks again for joining us here on the FlowRy Show. Have a wonderful day.